Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Digging Deep and Oki N11 podcast. I'm your host, Luis, and today we have a special guest, Paul Dickinson, founder and principal at Smart Infrastructure Solutions LLC. Today, we're going to have a great conversation with Paul regarding fiber optics, safe excavation, and the future of underground infrastructure. Paul, thank you for being here with us today.
Hey, thanks so much for inviting me, Luis. I remember when we met back at the Common Ground Alliance several months ago. It was kind of funny, we met in a shuttle bus as we were driving along, and I
Yeah.
learned what you do, and you learned what I do, and here we are. So it's my pleasure to speak with you today.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because it was what, like 3 a.m. in the morning when we met in the shuttle. You were heading to the airport as well.
Right.
So, Paul, let's just diving into our topic today. Tell me a little bit first about yourself, your background. I know you have over 35 years of experience in the industry of fiber optics. Tell us what you've done in the past and now that you're with Smart Infrastructure Solutions LLC.
Sure, yeah. So I've always been a techie. My background is material science. I've got a PhD in plastics, and that's how I started my career all the way back in 1990. And I was working on flame retardant materials and the cable materials that actually lead to optical fiber cables. And then I migrated into fiber optics specifically. So that's where it was really kind of starting up at the time. Corning and AT&T were the two big leaders in the industry trying to move forward fiber. And we'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about fiber versus copper and other things down the road. But I got very into that, and I worked for AT&T, which became Lucent Technologies, which became OFS, one of the major fiber providers in the world. And so fiber optics was there in the beginning. They were troubleshooting it, and it was very exciting. And then after 23 years of that, I worked for Duraline Corporation, which is the leading global provider of conduit, which is where fiber cables go in. So I've been in the telecom space for 35 years, as you described, and now I'm in a different space. Now I'm a consultant. I decided after 35 years I needed to try to recreate myself one more time. And so I'm still very plugged in, and I'm associated with a lot of different trade organizations now, and maybe we'll talk about the vertical markets as we speak here. But I'm still promoting the same agenda, still trying to get optical fiber and conduit and high bandwidth and other technology platforms in the hands of end users.
So we can say pretty much this is the new technology when it comes to infrastructure. But what changes have you seen in those 35 years of experience, like up to now? Like, what is something that really is capturing your attention more and more and more every year?
Yeah, so the industry's changed tremendously in the last 35 years. Initially, fiber was fairly high cost, and it was operationally difficult to make. And so while people were working on the physics, people were working on the operating capabilities in terms of how to make it. Because, if you can't scale and make it fast, then it's going to be high priced. So there's always been this back and forth between copper and how much copper can provide for bandwidth and use cases versus fiber. So I've seen the industry be able to produce fiber at a higher rate, so costs went down, which is always a benefit. And then the bandwidth went up. So there's a phenomenon called the wavelength division multiplexing, and that enables you to use multiple channels on the same fiber. So everything was leading more and more to lower cost. So that's what I've seen. Right now, I'm affiliated with the Fiber Broadband Association and many other organizations, which are promoting the use of fiber. It's become, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of many, ubiquitous in that if you want to have high bandwidth, you want to reduce the digital divide, you want to be able to have people work from home and such, you're going to need fiber. So that's where things have come in that the fiber is being used everywhere. Where they're going is what's even more exciting going down the road. Maybe I'll leave that for a little bit later in the conversation.
Sounds good. For those who are not familiar with it, just general public, how would you explain distributed fiber sensing in simple terms?
Okay, so that's my current passion. My current passion is taking the infrastructure we have now, which has been primarily used for broadband, and to provide, your internet and all the other aspects associated with that, and integrating new technologies on top of it. So AI is a topic you can't get away from these days,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
it's everywhere, right?
Yeah. So everyone, maybe I'll digress for a second on AI. AI is right now, people talk about data centers, love them or hate them. They're coming everywhere for generative AI, and that's causing a tremendous growth in the industry and a lot of capital funds being spent on data centers. So people think of AI as the AI we were using one of these chat GPT engines or something else. But AI has another role. AI
Oh,
has a role of taking sensor information and utilizing it to provide insights. So when you think about it right now, and we'll talk about different vertical markets where this applies. We have power utilities, we have water, we have pipelines, we have telecom fiber in and of itself. All of that infrastructure needs to be protected, and all that infrastructure needs insights so you can monitor what's performing well, what's not, and make operational changes. What do we have right now before distributed fiber optic sensing? We had individual sensors. So people call them IoT or Internet of Things type applications. An individual sensor, I'll give you an example, is like a camera, or on a road, it could be a microwave sensor monitoring speed, or it could be something measuring pressure. All of those individual sensors need to be powered in most cases. They need to be replaced and calibrated. So what distributed fiber optics, I'll finally get around to your question now. What distributed fiber optic sensing is,
okay.
it's using the same fiber that we're using now to provide your internet. So think of like a capillary system across the entire world, which is interconnecting everything all the way to your computer. And it's enabling this fiber to be used as a sensor in and of itself. And so I'll describe that. If you have fiber running under the ground, connecting two locations, right now you're sending laser pulses from one side to the other, and that's how you interpret what's going on with respect to data transfer, right? What this is using the fiber for an entirely different purpose. You send laser pulses through the fiber, but as something around the fiber gets perturbed and creates an acoustic signature like a vibration or a temperature increases, that gets um, perceived by the fiber. It causes a little bit of what's called micro strain. And the magic of what happens in the field is that you can identify what's going on, what and where it's going on. So, long story short,
Mhm.
right now, if you have a right of way and you have fiber running down the right of way, and you have, let's say, a interrogator, which is the device that's attached to the fiber, you can actually monitor what's happening next to the right of way, not just the fiber itself, but you can hear cars, you can hear pedestrians, you can hear people with excavators, people opening manholes. So this creates a tremendous amount of insight that you can use in the infrastructure space.
So my question is, first, how thick is the fiber, and how and where does the sensing goes in the fiber? You said,
Okay, so that's a great question. Yeah,
so I'm
it's
thinking,
tough.
and I just want to bring it. So this is a cable, right? Way
Yeah,
thicker than
yeah, yeah.
this, right?
Okay, yeah. So fibers are thinner than the human hair.
A little tiny. Yeah, I've seen them when you cut them. That's why
Yeah,
they cost so much to. I mean, can they be repaired? Can they actually be repaired once you, let's say, if you hit a fiber optic?
absolutely. Yeah. So let me. You asked me what changed in the fiber industry over time. Another thing that
Okay.
changed in the fiber industry over time is if you ever look at a cross section of a copper cable, a cross section of a copper cable typically is rather large. It carries limited bandwidth, and it's heavy. And we won't even get into the theft of the copper and other issues that are plaguing the industry right now. Fiber cable has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller over time.
Oh wow.
So the fiber itself is typically 250 microns in diameter, or in other cases, 200 or less in terms of microns in diameter. So you can pack what you just held up. You could pack, no, not your hair, the
No,
cable
here, the
itself.
cable,
You
this
could
cable.
pack about probably 75 or 100 fibers within that cable.
Wow, impressive.
So what's happening is that when people deploy fiber, they're putting a tremendous amount of fiber in the field. They're trying to anticipate how much are they going to need, and you're never going to know how much you're going to need. So that's so fiber in and of itself is extremely small. It's also extremely strong, but you put other tensile members in the cable also to make it stronger.
Now, and I think this is one of the first questions when we first met, how this helps when it comes to damage prevention, having a sensing in the fiber optic.
Okay, so when you have this network of fiber throughout the world that's enabling our broadband and enabling our internet and data transfer and everything else, if you think of that fiber as a passive sensor, where it can, I mean, for lack of a better term, think of it like a microphone or a thermometer, where it can actually monitor what's happening next to the fiber cable. So if you have that, let's say on a right of way, and you have power utilities running through the right of way, or water running through the right of way, or gas or oil pipeline, in addition to fiber, an excavator comes along. And an excavator is either there for a 811, again, going back to Oki, an 811 approved ticket, and they're out there in the field and they're doing their job. You already mapped your assets, you're already identifying what's going on, everything is great, and they're going to dig. That's wonderful. The problem is that there's a statistic out there by the Common Ground Alliance where in the US alone, and you probably know this already, there's $30 billion or more of damage a year, direct and indirect, that is created by people cutting into each other's stuff. Why does that happen?
I think every 6 minutes, from 6 to 9 minutes, a line gets hit in the US.
Yeah, that's probably right. And so why does it happen? It happens because mapping is typically not done well. So you may not know exactly where you think things are. But here's an interesting statistic. Nationally, 25% of the damage of that 30 billion plus that occurs every year is due to people not using the 811 system. So we can get into why that's the case. Maybe they're in a rush. Maybe they want to take their chances. Maybe they've done the math. Whatever it is, 25% is huge. So that's $7.5 billion or more a year because people are going around the 811 system. So now in the state of Texas, where I've been doing a lot of focused work recently, it's as high as 40%. So when you get to the Common Ground Alliance, which Oki 811 is a member of, and all the 811s in the US are a member of, it comes down to how do you stop this from happening? You know, you want to have best practices. Sometimes they're tailored state by state, but in most cases, they're across the board trying to become universal for the US, right? But even if you have best practices, if 25 to 40% are not using the system, you've got a problem. So now you need to combine best practices with enhanced tech. And so the way this helps the damage prevention industry is there's no technology right now that's readily available that will give you alerts before damage occurs. So that's the issue. The issue is if an excavator comes out and it's not an area where it's supposed to be monitoring or supposed to be modified, right, I should say, and starts digging up the line, you're going to find out when that line is broken or when someone dies or when a gas pipeline explodes. So by putting fiber adjacent to the asset, you're actually able to get minutes, if not longer, alerts where you're hearing and seeing the activity and you're identifying where it is, and you're able to send crews out and say, hey guys, you need to stop something here. This is not a good situation. So it's preventative alerts that are going to enable you to reduce those damages.
And something that I'm curious about is how this can be promoted nationwide, like to a point that every underground infrastructure has fiber optic sensing next to it.
That's a great question, and that's actually something
That's a challenge.
Yeah, we want the same thing. Everyone wants damages to be reduced. Everyone wants to enhance life safety. In fact, I'll give you another quick statistic here that I think your viewers may find interesting. Most of the infrastructure in the US was built after World War II.
Oh, wow.
It's 30 to 50 years old. So it's starting to be beyond, if not already beyond, its engineered lifetime. So we have two phenomena going on. We have the phenomenon of stuff's old, and it's starting to fall apart. Every now and then you hear about a bridge collapsing. Every now and then you hear about a pipeline corroding and having leaks or worse, right? So we have to be aware of what's going on, and two things have to happen. One is we have to be aware of the technology, we have to prove it in, and then as we build out new infrastructure, we need to integrate it with the new infrastructure. So how do we make this message more aware, more visible to the industry, I should say. I want to talk a little bit about Texas 811.
Mm-hmm.
Texas 811 is the largest call center in the U.S. and I think globally, because a lot of countries don't have call centers. You have one call in other places in Canada, but um, they're a visionary. And they're in the process right now of promoting this and vetting this in the state of Texas to show how it works. So they have what's called the Texas
The
811
garden.
Guardian program. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, I've heard of
They've
that.
given talks about it at not only Common Ground Alliance, they've given talks about it at utility technology councils and energy places and such, because people and your viewers, I'm sure, are not aware of what this technology is and what it could do. What they're doing is they're working closely with utility companies in the state of Texas and who are very interested in reducing their damages. And most are. I would think all of them would be interested in reducing the damages, right? Texas 811 has an understanding of where fiber providers have their fiber in the state of Texas and where all the utilities are. That's what an 811 call center does. That's what Oki does. You know by your polygons where the stuff is. And so you're able to identify not only where it is, but maybe where most of the damages occur. So Texas 811 realized this about 4 years ago or more, and they determined that if they offered this as a service to utilities, and I say that broadly, water, gas, oil, telecom itself, they could integrate it with their 811 call system. And here's how they do it. The utilities are either going to employ this technology themselves, or the technology providers are going to provide it as a subscription to the utility. So it'll be in place, it'll be monitoring, right? When an alert happens and you identify in a particular mile that someone is drilling or digging or opening a manhole, that's going to get funneled through the 811 call system. When that
Okay.
gets funneled through the 811 call system, there's a quick lookup. The quick lookup says, that's cool, no problem. This was a approved ticketed activity. It just shows that the activity is starting. Maybe the utility will get alerted. Your planned activity is starting, and it's starting with an excavator. Fantastic. But guess what? Maybe in 25 to 40% of those, as I described before, an activity occurs and there's no ticket. So then the utility will get an alert by Texas 811 that says, hey, there's a problem here. Go to the field and stop it. So that's how it happens. And the only way we can get this nationwide is by looking closely at what the Guardian system's doing. And by Texas 811, once it's proved in the state of Texas, taking it to their good partner, Oki 811, and
Yeah.
saying, hey, I work with you guys already.
Yeah.
They do work with you guys already in terms of handling calls or whatever the
Yeah, they
relationship
take a
is.
lot of our Spanish calls as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think Oki 811, along with many other call centers in the US, are going to be very ripe for this. In fact, other call centers have approached Texas 811 and said, hey, I want to do this. When can I do it? And they're like, well, slow down a little bit here. We're vetting it in Texas.
So,
But
first question when it comes to that, the funds, where do they come from? The funding to be
the
able to
funding,
have, yeah.
excellent question. So, yeah, so you're hitting all the
Texas
good
is
ones.
big and they have a lot of
Yeah,
oil,
yeah.
so
So,
I can
so
see that coming from oil money.
So,
Yeah.
some interesting things have happened in the industry. You asked how the fiber cable industry changed. I'm going to tell you how the sensing industry has changed. So, most of the sensing companies that are out there now, they're a member of the Fiber Optic Sensing Association. You can look them up, fiberopticsensing.org. I'm on the board there, and they
Yeah, I
are
saw that.
plugged
Yeah.
in. They're plugged into trying to drive this forward. They're not billion-dollar companies. They're companies, I would just going to hand wave here and say in the $5 to $50 million range. So they have great technology. No one's disputing the technology. It's been used, by the way, on nations' borders for decades. It's been used to monitor oil and gas pipelines. The issue is, how do you get the price points to the point where the business case makes sense to economically justify deploying it? And I'm going to tell you how. So
Okay.
number one, you create scale, right? How do you create scale? You create scale by showing the business case and the value of doing this. For so long, a lot of these companies have looked at one specific value prop. A tier one provider of fiber, I won't mention them, has looked for 5 or 6 years at how can I deploy this technology on my network and justify the cost. Where it's coming down to now is sharing the cost with common right-of-ways. So, for example, most right-of-ways have multiple utilities on them, or several do, right? So you can have a right-of-way by an energy company that has utility. Maybe has its fiber network in there. It may have gas in there along with power. Okay, so if you only need one fiber, and that's all you need, by the way, one fiber that's unused in maybe perhaps 800 fibers in the vicinity, or even a channel on one fiber, and you can monitor that entire region. Now, guess what you're doing? You're monitoring every utility in that region.
Okay. So there's a way to share costs on that when it
So it's
comes to it.
sharing costs, and then there's one more huge thing here. Um, in addition to damage prevention, there are so many other value adds for the technology outside of damage prevention. Let me take a quick sip here.
No, no, you're good. You're good. Great conversation.
I'm going to take power utility.
Okay.
So power utility, what Texas 811's primary focus is damage prevention. But if
Yeah.
you have this technology adjacent to a power utility grid, I'm going to mention a few other things it can do. When you have a power grid, and sometimes things go down, brownouts, blackouts, and you have to divert power around different areas, you can monitor using distributed temperature sensing the temperature of your conductors. So if you have threshold ratings of how hot your cable can get before it starts to get damaged, you can actually know the temperature of your cable and bring it up just to that safe level as compared to not fully utilizing your network. So there's temperature advantages to monitoring your network. There's also advantages in hearing in determining where you have damage occurred. Like you may get sparking, or you may get some other operational issues occurring on your network. So the providers of the technology can not only provide their systems for damage, they can also provide their systems for a much wider set of use cases. And when you do that, then the utility, I don't care whether they're gas, they're power, or whatever, can do the economics, not just for I'm going to stop a strike from happening, but guess what? Maybe I can lower my OpEx, or I can reduce my manpower and all the monitoring I'm doing to try to keep it safe. Or, and this is a big one, I can do preventative maintenance before something breaks, because I'm hearing and
Like,
seeing something that's going wrong before it breaks down. So there's a tremendous advantage, and I chalk it up to one word: resilience, right? We're building, the statistic I heard the other day was $1.4 trillion in
wow.
power grid over the next 5 to 10 years to be upgrading our grid system for not only because it's old, as I just told you, but for generative AI data centers. So if you're going to
Wow.
spend $1.4 trillion, wouldn't you want that system to be as resilient as it possibly can be? And the only way to enhance the resilience is to put in localized sensing to give you the sensor points that your then AI can analyze and give you operational advantages.
So, for example, I know Texas is kind of like, starting, already has been starting with that new technology and all that. We might start seeing it on the East Coast or on the West. How, I know that you've been working closely with the Choctaw Nation here in Oklahoma. How do you start groups like this to kind of get involved and kind of create like a pattern with with the whole state? Because obviously
Sure.
the Choctaw Nation is very important here in the state, but how do you get them to, hey, this works, this is the future, let's bet on it?
So this is the cool part. So again, I've seen this for about 5 years. The technology, here's the timeline that typically occurs. Someone becomes aware of this technology and they go, oh my God, I've got so much fiber already in place, or I'm about to build out a whole bunch of fiber. In addition to just providing broadband, what else can I do? So I'll take the example of Choctaw Nation, which is right in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
right? So I I've talked to them quite a few times. In addition to other tribal areas, they're in a lot of forested areas, and you have to ask the question, what is the value add for being able to monitor your network? I don't care whether it's just fiber or whether it's utilities or not. Some of the answers that have come back have been checking for forest fires and knowing where they occur so you can go out there and quickly address them. So we've been talking damage until now. You can actually monitor ahead of time where a forest fire has come across the cable by monitoring the temperature of the local vicinity. So that's one example. The other example is that if you have right of ways and you have the ability to put your new fiber closer to the asset than as if you weren't aware of the technologies. Normally, if someone built out a network for broadband, they just use the right of way, they build it out for fiber. They don't think about, if I put it next to my power utility, then I can have two bangs for the buck. I can not only protect my fiber, I can protect my power utility. So it's a matter of designing it into your new builds. So you're putting the conduit and you're putting the fiber cable adjacent to your assets. And the other thing is, and this is what I have fun with as a consultant these days, that what I typically do is I bring expert providers of the technology to the table. So there's a state in the US that approached me and they heard about the technology through a distributor. And they basically said, hey, this is exciting. How does this work for me? Where can I use this? How much does it cost? All these things. So what I would do is I would say, hey, I can introduce you to several providers of the technology and they can work out all the details with you. So that's happening as we speak. It's a community-driven effort where maybe a municipality or a tribal nation is building out something to scale in a large way, and they want to know how this technology works. So we're at the point now where it can not only be shown that it works, you can do the economics.
So it's just pretty much at one point getting all these groups and stakeholders all together and kind of, hey, getting everybody on the same page and kind of seeing the results eventually to kind of move forward.
You said it yourself there. It comes down to collaboration. Yeah. So it takes a whole village to make this work, right? So what do you have? You have the end users who are going to benefit. You have the regulators who want to see more safety occurring in the field. You have the providers of the technology who want to sell and make a profit their units and their software, right? And so you've got to integrate them and you've got to get them together, talking to each other and determining how to make it happen.
How do you see fiber optic technology continuing to impact communication safety and damage prevention in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, that's a broad question.
Okay. And I know. I just had it here on my list, and I want to try.
Yeah.
At least your vision. Like, how do you see this technology? Because time flies, and we're already like seeing. We're talking about AI, has grown, and AI can do anything for you nowadays. So how can you, because we talk about damage prevention, but at one point there's got to be some quick solution to start decreasing those damages, right? And maybe this is a solution in short terms.
So I want to give you an example. Then I'll dive into a couple vertical markets for you. So, what was your iPhone designed for primarily early on? Right. I mean, it was basically initially for communication, right?
Right.
And I mean, kids don't even know how to call anymore. They text. So it went from voice communication to texting, right? And then the ability for it to act like a technology platform, to have a zillion apps. I don't know about you, but I have probably 8 screens of apps on my phone. So think about fiber in an analogous way. Think about fiber as an infrastructure that was put in place to provide wireless backhaul for 5G and earlier Gs, right? And basically to provide SCADA networks to monitor infrastructure and to provide communication, whether it's cross-continent or whether within the US. That's why fiber was initially put in place. But now, where I see it going is with the realization that fiber in and of itself is a technology platform that enables a zillion other things. That's exactly the same as your iPhone. So fiber is going to continue to provide data transfer between companies or whatever. It's also going to provide your communication capabilities. but it's going to enable distributed fiber optic sensing. It's going to enable, quantum sensor computing. It's going to enable connections between data centers at extremely low latency and fast speed, so you can build out this generative AI data center across the world. So that's where it's going. Think of fiber as a technology platform, and think of the awareness of what it can be used for exponentially growing.
So far, is it just Texas who has been, or as a state that has been kind of a little more ahead of the curve when it comes to fiber sensing, fiber optic sensing? Sorry.
Well, no, when it comes to the 811 system and damage prevention, absolutely Texas 811. When it
Okay.
comes to the implementation of this across vertical markets, I'll mention a few examples now, which I think will make your viewers' mouths drop open, right?
Okay.
So I already mentioned a little bit with power utilities, how it can monitor both temperature and
Yeah.
also acoustics and stop damage, right? Uh, Oil pipelines or gas pipelines. If you have a fiber cable within about a meter of the pipeline and a pipeline develops a leak, instead of waiting for that leak to be a catastrophic environmental mess, the noise of the leak at 1 millimeter or 2 or 3 millimeters coming out under high pressure, the fiber can hear acoustically and can tell you exactly where it's occurring so you can go out and fix it. So that's where the monitoring of both old and new assets will come in terms of increasing life safety and protecting things. Now, here's a good one for roads. So
Mm-hmm.
for roads, the way road technology works right now, I looked into this a couple years ago. You have cameras, right? So they're monitoring the roads. Those grids you see as you drive down the road, they
Uh-huh.
have microwave sensors that monitor speed, right? And they also have some induction loops that go in the lanes and they give you traffic count. And so and there's more that I'm forgetting or not knowing, right?
No.
But if you have fiber running along a road on one side that was never intended to be there for monitoring traffic, yet was intended to be there for, running their SCADA systems or providing broadband. You give me one fiber, I can tell you the speed of the cars going both directions by the vibration of the
Oh
tires.
wow,
So
that's
the
impressive.
vibration of the tires goes through the asphalt, through the ground, all the way to the right of way, through the cable, to the fiber, causes a micro strain. And as that tire moves along the road, that micro strain moves with it. And there are companies out there with the software who can give you speed and can give you, by the way, even maybe more importantly, accidents and other things. So now talking about, you asked about economically, how do you justify it?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the biggest hurdle right now in the broadband industry? And the reason why satellite is getting a little bit of a play in very rural areas is because it's very expensive to take fiber all the way out to a remote farm if there's only one or two people who are going to take the service, right? Because it costs a lot to build it. So the fiber drop rate or the take rate is important. But what if you could run it along that road, monitor rural traffic, save lives, and drop it off to the remote location? Now you've taken multiple business cases and you've combined them, and now it makes economic sense. So
Yeah, that was my
yeah,
question. Like, for example, in Oklahoma, how do you, how you have this type of underground infrastructure in rural areas that are so far out, like in the Panhandle? How
right.
how do you have all that infrastructure all the way up to there?
Well, yeah.
So
Well, let me give you an idea with distance because we haven't talked about that during this call yet. So with one of these sets of hardware, maybe they're about so big, right? And they're powered just like your computer would be powered. You may have multiple ports coming out either way. You can passively monitor, let's say, 100 kilometers or 60 miles or so in both directions with one box. So that's what we're talking here. We're talking long distances. So for example, I've talked to folks in Canada who have extremely long rural routes, and Oklahoma has extremely long rural routes. Why wouldn't you want to know and have intelligence along those routes of what's happening and whether it's either being dug or whether something's going on without having to have human manpower monitor that route? So it's ideally suited for rural locations, even more so perhaps than urban.
now Let's get outside of the U.S. What any difference between the fiber optic here in the U.S. and in other countries like Canada, or even you were in Europe not too long ago? Anything different when it comes to this technology?
No, that's the real value add here, right? So there are companies out there, and there are use cases for it, who can develop a special fiber, who can give you even greater sensitivity than we're talking about. So there are special fibers, but the standard fiber that's been used for 2 decades or more in the optical fiber industry for Broadcom works with this technology, and that's been standardized through standards bodies globally. So
Oh, okay.
basically, what we're saying here is any fiber that's already deployed, if it happens to be close to what you're trying to monitor, or any fiber that's being used for Broadcom, as long as it's properly situated, and there are other parameters we won't get into today, but works. So this is being used worldwide. In fact, Europe is farther ahead than the US by far in
When it
deploying
comes
this
to what?
technology.
When it comes to the fiber,
No, when it comes to deploying
the
distributed
deployment.
fiber optic sensing, the
Okay.
US has been kind of a laggard with respect to the awareness and the adoption. A lot of the companies that developed this technology were actually European companies. And so
Oh,
they've already been in place promoting and showing and demonstrating through awareness what the technology can do. The US has been a little behind. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to talk to the right entities in the US now, and I'm going to tell you a couple organizations that are quite interesting. So I mentioned the Fiber Optic Sensing Association, right? I also mentioned the Common Ground Alliance, which is damage prevention,
right.
and then the Alliance for Innovation and Infrastructure, AII.org. They're a nonprofit think tank out of Washington that's also very, very plugged into how to increase the resilience of transportation routes, power utilities, and such. So I'm actually a member of all three of those organizations. But
Oh,
I
that's
would
awesome.
advise anyone in your audience who wants to learn more to check out those organizations, become familiar. If you have power utilities in Oklahoma who are interested enough to say, hey, I'd like to reduce my damages,
Yeah.
they can either contact me through my website, or they can reach out through you and you can put them in touch with me. Whatever works. But there's tremendous value add here once you become aware of it.
Two last questions. One, how does the workforce work when it comes to this industry? Is it growing? Is it limited? Although the when it comes to like having people knowing more about this technology, how to install it and all that kind of stuff.
Did you say, I didn't catch it,
The
workforce?
workforce, yeah, like people have being prepared and having all the knowledge when it comes to fiber optic sensing. Is
Okay,
it
so again, I tried to tell a realistic and a good news story here. So the companies that manufacture the hardware and software, what they would typically do, either themselves or through a channel partner, is if someone was interested in deploying this,
Mhm.
they would literally come out to your site. They would assess what's called a KMZ, or your fiber route and your utility route. They would kind of tell you what you can and can't do based upon proximity. But then
Mm, okay.
they would calibrate where your fiber is, and that's a simple procedure where they actually make a noise on the ground and then locate where the peak is. And so in many cases, people don't know where their fiber is. They're not sure. So you calibrate where your fiber is, and then they would install, calibrate, and monitor if you choose. Now,
Gotcha.
some organizations have their own engineering department. They say, thank you very much. Show me how to use it. I'm going to continue to use it. So there's a lot of different ways to slice and
I
dice
see.
it.
Okay.
But basically, um, it works in that either you could take on the technology yourself. It's better, really just a matter of taking the technology and attaching it to a fiber. Once you have that, you've established your sensor down the fiber.
So it's pretty kind of straightforward once you understand how it works, and then just
Once you understand it, I mean, I'm not going to minimize the science
no, no.
behind it, but the companies have been continuously trying to make it much more user friendly. And again, as I mentioned early in the call, I think that there are companies out there who will sell the hardware and software. There are
Mhm.
also companies out there who will offer subscription, and they will say, I'll install it and you'll pay me some sort of a monthly or annual rate, and a monitor for you. So there's lots of ways, depending on what the end user wants to do. There's lots of ways to do it.
Um, so for example, and just kind of I want to go back to Texas a little bit. There's is there the two ways where, like, for example, I have a company, I hire this fiber optic sensing. So they install, and let's say a subscription, right? Anything that happens to my infrastructure, does it necessarily the 811 center has to be notified, or I'll get notified directly since I'm paying a
So
subscription?
I'll answer that two ways. One, I don't think you intended, and then the other way. So the other thing I want to mention, people get nervous when people attach things to their infrastructure. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the important thing I need to mention, I think for all your viewers is this is not something that's integrated from a security standpoint into their infrastructure. So power utilities and other can get really nervous about that. Think of it like edge computing, where it's a box and it's accessing the fiber information, processing, determining what's going on, and then sending insights across an interface to the end user. So, for example, on a DOT, if you ever been inside a DOT traffic center, it's phenomenal. Yeah, it looks like NASA. There's screens everywhere and they're monitoring this and monitoring that. It's one more data feed that
Okay.
feeds into their integrated total tech stack approach. So that's one thing. And I don't think I answered directly what you were asking though. So ask it again.
So I was asking, let's say I have a company. So you were saying that everyone in Texas, the way it works is that they'll get notified, so they can
The
notify
811 will work with the provider of the
the provider.
technology. They'll
Yeah.
get notified. They'll verify whether it's a ticketed activity or not. And then based upon that, they'll notify the utility when it's something they need to be concerned about. Uh, that's one value add. The other value
Okay.
add is the other one I mentioned, where independently the utility may say, I want more features. I want more value add in addition to
Okay.
damage prevention. I'm going to work with the provider of the technology to get those value add features too.
So, for example, in a different state, a different 811, let's say, I don't know, here or Kansas or whatever, I can have that service provided by these companies, and I can get all these features and all these notifications when my line gets damaged or something or needs maintenance. That's separate from the 811. That's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
what my
So
question
so
was.
what I suggest is if you want to do the 811 route, then you contact Texas and they can guide and even maybe even provide it as a value add to that call center. So
Gotcha.
that's the call center aspect. If it's independent of 811, any utility
You want that.
can contact um, these companies and have this installed and not
Gotcha.
even integrated with 811. 811 is just another value added feature. If a utility, if a large oil provider simply wants to know, I want to know when I have leaks. I want to know when someone's near my stuff. I want to know when someone's anywhere nearby. They don't have to do that with 811. I think they should,
Yeah, also they
but
should,
they
but
can
they can.
independently do this on their own, and that's actually what's going on right now. So these companies I described are providing units, and there's lots of examples. You can look at some of the use cases that exist on the Fiber Optic Sensing Association website. They're providing these utilities now the capability of doing what we described.
Okay, now I'm in my last two questions. Okay, I
Okay.
think we kind of touched it in the very beginning. There's always, the saying like, oh, once you hit a fiber line, it's done. It's cost a lot of money to fix it. In fact, you have to pretty much install a whole new fiber line.
Okay.
Can you really fix, because I know you were saying there are little tiny little kind of
Ah,
cables. Once somebody's excavating and heads it with a shovel, how do you fix it? Do you have to change the whole thing, or just you can
okay.
connect those
Okay.
little tiny
So I'm
hair
gonna I'm
cables,
gonna
right?
I'm gonna answer that two ways too.
Okay.
So the prior company I just worked for is Duraline. They're the global leader of conduits, which is where fiber cables go in under the ground.
Hmm.
The conduits are not all created equal. You have what's traditional conduits, maybe they're 4 inch, 2.5, or inch and a quarter, which are one hole, one pipe. And when you put a cable through that, it used to be you put a small cable through, maybe it was 144 fibers. Now you can put, believe it or not, between data centers, as many as 7 or 8 thousand fiber
Oh my
cables
gosh.
in one cable in this, what I'm talking about, right? Now,
Hmm.
just imagine when that gets hit. So there's something called fiber splicing, which many of our viewers are probably aware of, which requires somebody in the field to prepare the two ends of the broken fiber and to fuse them together once they're clean to provide that seamless light interface between the two. It takes a lot of time. It's done
I bet.
routinely. It's done all the time. It's done all the
Okay.
time. But what Duraline has pioneered is something called micro cables and micro conduits, where instead of it being I wish I had one to show you here, but I don't right now. Instead of it being one pipe, it has a series of smaller pipes. So what you have is you have a cable that has a slightly lower fiber count going through, let's say, 7 individual pipes. So when
Oh,
something gets
okay.
hit, you have a choice now. Your choice is that I'm going to repair it in the field, which a lot of people do, or I'm just going to jet in a new cable because it's so damaged by whatever happened. And so you save time, you save cost, and you actually have the ability to upgrade in these additional currently unfilled holes. That's called microconduit. So
Oh, I
that's
see.
that, but that didn't answer your question. So you can splice, but things are getting worse in that not only do you have standard fiber, but in some cases out there you have something called hollow core fiber, which is between data centers, which is even more novel. And when it gets damaged, it's even more of a bear to replace and repair. So the short answer is it's very small. The technology exists. They have what's called fusion splicers. They splice it all together, but it's time intensive. But what is the best thing you should do? Never have the damage in the first place. And
Call 811.
the way to reduce the damage, going full circle back to this whole conversation, is to have best practices in the field, but also to use technology like distributed fiber optic sensing so you're alerted before the cut happens.
Correct. No, I agree. I mean, that's why you contact 811 too. You don't want to hit a fire line either.
Yeah.
Last question, and I think you pretty much answer like, and this is just directly, just we always want to close with this type of question. What is safe excavation? Why is safe excavation so important when it comes to protecting underground infrastructure and keeping communities safe and connected? And this is
Well,
just
yeah. Ask that one more time. I missed the
okay.
beginning.
So why is safe excavation so important when it comes to protecting underground infrastructure and keeping communities connected?
Oh, well, because when damages occur, I mean, you could take off all the things that can happen. Your service is going to go down. Number one, you're gonna maybe have a life-threatening situation where your water main is no longer providing water, or if it's gas or oil, something's going to blow up. You're going to have situations with water scarcity. I mean, we could talk about data centers where on any water main, you may have on average 30-40% of the water being lost. You don't even know where it's being lost. So as things become more arid in the US with climate change, you're going to have water being more and more important. You need to find out where damage is occurring proactively so you can prevent it over time. And I mean, life safety issues, number one. Number two, the resilience of the network so that you don't have to keep going back and retrofitting it. Economics, $30 billion plus in the US alone with the damage that occurs. Uh, Everything we can possibly do to reduce damages, we should do. And again, twofold best practices through Common Ground Alliance, which does a wonderful job, and also through new technology that give you the alerts ahead of time.
And just like you said earlier, it takes a village, right? To
Yeah,
have a safe community and infrastructure.
right.
Well, Paul, thank you again for being here with us today and digging deep in OK1 podcast. Paul Dickinson, founder and principal at Smart Infrastructure Solutions. Thank you, Paul, for being here with me today in this great conversation.
It was my pleasure. And if anyone wants to reach out and chat, they can do it for you or come to me directly.
Awesome. Well, everyone, stay tuned for this episode when it comes out, and always stay safe. Till next time.
Thank you.